My mic was muted. Good evening, everyone. It is so great to be here with you. I am Sue Webley. I am a board member of the LGBTQ Faith Leaders of African Descent, and I am sitting in for our moderator, Ryan Hill, this evening for our conversation. Welcome, all of you who are watching, you who are watching on Facebook, you who are watching on YouTube, and on across all the pages. We welcome you to Flow Conversations. Flow Conversations is a monthly conversation broadcast that affirm our intersectionalities, make space for marginalized voices, and offer practical integrative tools for personal and community healing. And it is sponsored by LGBT faith leaders of African descent, which was formed to address religious harm and homophobia in the Black community. I am excited about our conversation partner this evening. I'm excited about the guest that we have this evening. It is my sibling. And so I'm so grateful to be filling in tonight because that way we get to have a organic conversation. So if you're watching, before I bring our guest on, please share. Please share with your family and friends. And we want you to engage in the conversation as well by posting your comments and posting your questions. We don't want to be talking heads tonight. So please do share, please like, and please participate by posting your comments and your questions. So I'm getting ready to bring on our guest, my sibling, Dr. Renair Amin, who is a relationship wellness coach and LGBTQ faith-based trauma advocate. And I have the honor of reading her bio. Dr. Renair Amin is an author, international speaker, coach, and educator specializing in the areas of relationship wellness, sexuality, and faith based trauma. Renair is the founder of LGBTQ Faith Matters, a platform dedicated to healing and educating others about spiritual trauma in LGBTQ communities of color. She holds a Doctor of Ministry degree from New York Theological Seminary and utilizes her academic journey, extensive training, and experiential wisdom to change the lives of people she encounters regionally and globally. So, those of you who are watching this evening, help me welcome Dr. Renair Amin. Hey, Renair, you are muted.
I know, I saw that. In 2020, they said that was the most used phrase,
Yeah,
that you are muted. Your
you
mic
are
is
muted.
muted.
I'm pretty sure that's going to end up in some dictionary somewhere. Like that. That is, yeah, that's going to end up with some dictionary. But how are you? It's so good to see you, my sibling. Oh my gosh, I love you so much. Again, I'm not upset at all that I get to sit in for Ryan tonight because I get to engage with you and my walk and heavy partner. Well, listen. Those of you that don't know, we go way back, way back. So how are you tonight, Dr. Renair?
I am good. I am getting ready I'm packing up everything this weekend. I am going for the Miss Exquisite Full Figure USA at Large Crown.
Yes.
And so I felt, what a better way to kick off just this phenomenal weekend, but to be with all of you. And it turns out I get to be with you as well. And so it's just, everything happens as it needs to. I send love to Ryan
Yes.
where he is. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to be here with you.
Yes, I'm grateful too, and best of luck. I'm going to be right there in the place with you, rooting you on, being all ratchet and loud because I want you to get this crown.
Yes.
I want you
Yes.
to get this
This one.
crown.
Yes.
Again, those of you who are watching, welcome, welcome, welcome. And so, whatever page you are on, listen, let us know where you are watching from. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. We would love to kind of learn a little bit more about you tonight. And remember to share. So, tonight's conversation is titled, Who Are We Now? Who are we now? Dealing with post pandemic changes in relationships, a relationship with ourselves, a relationship with partners, and all others, right? And we know that, just coming through this pandemic, you and I, Renair, do you want me to call you Dr. Renair or just Renair? Listen, y'all,
Renair.
I know that I know my sibling as
Renair.
Renair, so um, and so we've come through this pandemic together, even though not in the same space, right? We've come through it together. We started the Walking Heavy show together, because of the pandemic, and started talking about things that were happening in the community. So we began to build relationships with other people online, and that is very true for a lot of organizations. That's very true for a lot of people, right? Everything was moved online, and so relationships looked a little different. Our building relationships looked a little different. But what also was different was how we, not just you and I, but us in general, how we engaged with each other during this pandemic. I think we realized some things about each other, right? Like some of us realized we really didn't like who we were with, or we realized that maybe something was off in our communication, right? When you are with somebody all the time, you begin to realize things about yourself and the other person, and there's some tension that might come up, when you're dealing with each other. So that's why we felt that it would, now that the world is opening up, it would be a good time to talk about relationships post pandemic. And so, as a faith leader, so let's get into our conversation. As a faith leader, I believe, right, our outward relationships are an expression of our relationship with ourselves, and I believe that to be true. In the midst of our communities closing then opening, so much uncertainty. How do we first find healthy ways to relate to ourselves, now, that the world is opening up?
Well, I don't think the ways change.
Mhm.
I think that what has now happened is people are a lot more aware of things with themselves. And I won't say all, because there's still a lot of people that are in a different place. We are now 50% of the population is vaccinated. So you're engaging in conversations with people that are pro vaccine and people that are anti vaccine. You're engaging with relationships that have developed or experienced either an elevation
Mhm.
or a regression. So it's this weird place of, I don't want to say going back to normal. I do feel that there are some people and some organizations and some communities that are trying to shift back to normal.
Mhm.
But you can't go back to something that has had such a dramatic change. And you wouldn't want to, because some of the things that have come out of, because people are saying we're post pandemic, we are post COVID-19.
Mm.
We are entering another stage that has other variants and that have other aftermath of people that have experienced COVID that is still dealing with it. So I don't know if we are post pandemic. I think that we are mid, because we're still dealing with the repercussions of everything that has come.
Mhm.
As far as finding healthy ways, I don't think those ways change, because it involves self care. So whether that self care is a therapist, because a lot of people discovered they needed, to have someone to talk to process all the things that they are experiencing.
Right.
If it's journaling or writing or your own ritual work, whether that is prayer, meditation, yoga, like whatever it is that you have done for your personal, self care, I don't think those things change. They are a staple. They are what they are. I think how we apply them to our lives is what is changing,
Mm, mm, mm.
because we can't run away from the conversation of mental health any longer.
Right, right, right. And I think for some of us, um, we developed an awareness of our own mental health needs for that, right? Um, when things were open and we were able to kind of go out and be out and be out in the world with a mask, right? I mean, we can hide what was really going on by going out and being active and but now that we're in and we couldn't really get out, we didn't have an outlet. Now we were kind of realizing that these things was like, okay, yeah, yeah, isolation is not good. Isolation is not good for anybody. But then, for me personally, I realized isolation is not good for me, even as an introverted person, right? Even as an introverted person, even as someone that enjoys their own company, this isolation quickly turned into something else, right? And so it made me realize that, yeah, I need to get some additional help. So for personally for you, what sorts of because I know you said that some of these practices aren't new, right? Those self care practices. But what personally have you implemented during this time that you didn't do before?
Well, I think for me, I don't think anything was new. I think that I got more intentional about things.
Hmm.
Anytime that you have something, and I'm speaking just for me, when
Yeah.
I have something that is life shifting, the way that was, because I was dealing with family that I couldn't be with that had contracted COVID. I was dealing with people that I knew that were going through their own experiences. I found myself more in tune with the vibration of what was happening around me. Because initially, and I remember having this conversation in the past, like initially I didn't know what to do.
Right.
And then at some point all I knew was to be still until I could do something else.
Hmm.
The one thing that if I had to hone in on one thing, I think it made me talk to people more. Like I got closer to my siblings, I got closer to some of my friends. I Because with the schedule that I keep and all of the things that I do, I would often miss out on some very important moments in the people that I love and care about lives. So
Hmm.
part of my self-care was reconnecting with my pit crew, with my support system, and being able to engage with them in a different way. Like, for example, one of my friends, we started watching a particular TV show every week at the same time. And
Hmm.
that became our bonding time. And we still to this day do it whenever the Masked Singer kicks into kicks into motion. But that was something that I didn't even realize that I needed,
Hmm.
that reconnection with my circle.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, those of you who are watching, hey, hit us up. And hey, Victoria Shep, watching from Brooklyn, and also Katrina. Hey, guys, watching from Brooklyn. Welcome, welcome. You know, hit up in the comments some of the ways that you've been practicing self care during this time. We want to hear about it. Okay. So, Renair, as a relationship expert, what are some trends of internalized effects derived from so much loss and uncertainty. How are people? How have you viewed that people are struggling internally in your work?
Well, one of the biggest things that came up, especially during and now post, is the reevaluation of relationships
Mm,
and what they look like. Because when you're constantly in movement, you don't always have to check in on those relationships because they are as they are in the time that they are happening. when everything slowed down and as we're coming out, people are now dealing with the things that they discovered about themselves and the ones that they loved during that time. So
Mm,
like I feel like we're in the aftermath. Like everything came out and everything is here, and now as the world is opening up again, is this a friendship? Is this a lover? Is this an organization? Is this something I still want to be connected to?
mm,
Having learned all that I've learned, and if I do not, how do I close these conversations in love? Because what happens sometimes when, especially couples and family, are engaging conversations around boundaries
mm,
or
mhm,
even endings of certain dynamics, history plays a part. And so people will say, well, you got to understand, y'all been together for such and such amount of years, or that's your sister, or that's your brother. You still have to maintain the same type of relationship. So I
yeah.
feel like we're in the cleanup stage.
Wow.
We're in the cleanup stage of all of the things that have emerged. And now people are finding themselves having to make the hard decisions because now we're not quarantined together.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
don't have to do this anymore. Now, you know, we don't have the same, because I think some of the conversation that I've engaged post, with shutdown. Let me say post shutdown because I don't believe again that we're post pandemic, but post
right, right.
shutdown is this this truth of, if these had been my last days, would this have been what I still wanted to be connected to?
Mm,
Because that's what the pandemic did. That's what the shutdown did. It made some people, I can't say all, but
right.
it made many people reevaluate, if this is my last moment, would I have been okay with what is? And
Mm,
then once we got the dun, 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 we can start opening up.
right.
Things are, shifting. People are getting vaccinated. Now it's like, so, so that wasn't the end. I have some more time in front of me. I don't know if I want to take you with me. But you
Mm,
also had the other extreme. So let me not make it so dire. You
right, right.
also had the realization for some people that I really love this person.
Mhm,
I really love my friend. I really love my lover. I really love this person and I don't want to lose them. And in
right.
romantic relationships, you're watching now a lot of the babies that were conceived during that time are
Yes,
starting to
yes.
be born. There were a lot of engagements,
Mhm.
weddings, and
Yeah.
some sudden weddings. People were like, wait a minute, they got married. I didn't even know they were in a relationship, because that evaluation
Yes.
of your life was like, if this if this was the best, was it good enough?
Mm. Do you think that part of the thing that triggered that evaluation was the look at with so many in talking COVID-19 specific deaths, um, uh, people passing away, losing friends, losing loved ones. Um, do you think that um, part of the thing that triggered that evaluation was a look at our own mortality?
Absolutely. And
Hmm.
let's go bigger than that.
Yeah.
That wasn't the only thing that was happening during that time. We were
Right.
dealing with a corrupt and very influential government.
Hmm.
We were dealing with racism being, I can't say being, because it wasn't new, but being, it just was there. Like there
Yeah.
was no getting around it. And then we were also dealing with lives being taken
Yes. Yes.
unjustly.
Yeah.
whether it was because of race, whether because of homophobia or transphobia or whatever, people were leaving this earth and we were locked down and could not do maybe what we wanted to do about it.
Right.
So we were
Right.
absolutely faced with our mortality because the media was making it seem to you, if you're around your loved one and you touch them and or you sneeze on them or you brush them the wrong way, you could
Hmm.
you could inadvertently cause them harm and it
Yes.
could be fatal. So then you had anxiety coming into play. So
Yes.
there were so many moving parts. Absolutely. I believe that the conversation of mortality opened up for many. I can't say all,
Right.
because some people just felt like, oh, well, something's happening and I'm not affected. So when I say some, I'm not including them.
Right. 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 And certainly there were quite a few people that were not affected
Right,
by the shutdown, and um, some of those just didn't even believe that COVID-19 existed, and they believe it was like some trick of the government, and yeah, so it's yeah. So we're not gonna bring them all the way up, but certainly there's a group of people that were not affected. They still gathered, they still engaged with their families. They didn't care what was happening, right? So
right,
they didn't feel what many of us, particularly in Black and Brown communities, felt, right? Particularly our Black and Brown elders, what they felt. Some of who were already living alone, already isolated, right? And now this shutdown has caused them to be even more so. So yes, hi Dr. Perry, talking about our elders. Hi Dr. Perry. Yes, Dr. Perry says so true. People evaluate it, and I think this is why some are not returning to meaningless work. Yes, absolutely correct, Dr. Perry. A lot of us are evaluating the work that we do and where we were before the shutdown, where we are now, right? And what brings us satisfaction, what brings us joy. Yes, a lot of us are not returning to meaningless work. Thank you so much for your comment. Again, y'all, thank you again for joining us, joining myself, joining Dr. Renair as we have this conversation about relationships. And I want to invite you again to please share this with your friends and your family and engage. Come on, let's get some comments. And even if you have questions for Dr. Renair, we want to see those questions too. So, how has challenges, in your opinion, how has challenges in belief systems or personal ideologies caused a shift in how people gather, how they meet, how they stay connected?
I found myself using this phrase a lot over the past 6 months. It depends on what side of the table that you sit,
Hmm.
because if you're gathering and if your life wasn't really interrupted, it was more inconvenienced, you would have a different answer to that,
Mm,
because there's a difference. Some people's lives were interrupted, other people's lives were inconvenienced. So I've been at this crossroads around this need. I feel like sometimes people have, that there has to be some type of disruption.
mm,
There's a binary that people operate in. So either you're vaccinated or you're not. Either like you're pro vaccination or you're anti vaccination. Or
mhm.
you're pro this or you're not this. It's There was a lot of talk about unity when we were in the beginnings of everything and things looked very dire. There was a lot of talk about coming together.
Yes.
I've noticed that as things have started opening back up, we're introducing the divide again.
Mm, mhm.
And so when I think about the personal belief systems and and people's faith systems, I really believe it depends on the side of the table that you sit on, how your belief system would have either grown or expanded or stayed the same,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. Um, because thinking about that, for some of us, that faith, that belief system, is what got us through, got us over, right? Um, what comes up for me is how many, so we know that a lot of churches, right, got online, right? They have a choice. We couldn't meet, so everybody was virtual. And I think during that time, some people decided, well, now's a good time to go search, go looking somewhere else, right? Here's my out. Now's a good time to research for myself, to read some different things, to look at some things differently, right? And so, while some for some of us, our faith is the thing that got us over, even while chaos was happening all around us. For others, I agree that it may have changed, right? And so it's amazing to me how being shut in and shut down and disconnected, physically disconnected from others, can serve to kind of change up one's mindset. Let's see what comments we have. Yes.
And while you look at the comments, I want to add what was also helpful was a lot of people were able to experience other things, and they didn't necessarily have to not experience their thing.
Right. Right.
Sometimes if you have church at 11 and your friend has church at 11 and you can't support them, you can't be there, being virtual allowed people to go back and watch replays that they might not have been able to have replays. It allowed them to visit churches that are not necessarily in their area.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for some people it allowed, I can say for me, it strengthened my faith. And
Mm,
if you're new watching the show, or watching me rather, let me say that I have had a journey through my faith journey, processing through my own religious trauma and things like that. Having that time, I got to go to churches and just sit and listen and be fed, even places that weren't here, that I would have never had the opportunity or the time to go and experience. And that was helpful for me.
yeah.
Even being able to watch videos on replays that I might not, that churches, because some churches went virtual that don't usually share their services and things like that in that manner.
Yeah.
So it changed me spiritually because I got to eat
Mm, yeah.
and experience different spaces. And for the spaces that didn't work for me, I got to hit the button
Yeah.
and close it down,
Right. Right.
which you can't always do when you're sitting in a space. You can't always just get up and walk out, even though I do. But you can't. You can't always.
Well, I agree. You try to sneak out and then put that one finger up, which I hate. So I hate that whole one finger business. Against, can't stand it. Yeah, that's right. Can't stand it. But I dare say that some people got free even during the shutdown, right? A lot of people got their freedom during the shutdown. Okay, so again, we mentioned during this conversation so far, talked a little bit about, the loss. How many of us have lost? And not just talking about losing a loved one, even though that's the part we mentioned, but loss of resources, loss of finances, loss of job, There's like compounded loss, and we truly grieve those losses as a community. Now that we are yet opening up, right? Slowly opening up, and we'll see how open we are in the next couple months. With this Delta variant going around, right? And people still, and some people not really being, really not caring. I'm just going to say that they don't want to mask up. They want to practice their right not to mask up, not to get vaccinated. Um, how do we how do we support or continue to support our friends and our families and our partners, those that we have connection with, while we are still yet in the process of this grieving? And so you made a wonderful point about it not being post pandemic, right? Like we are not beyond the pandemic, right? And then when we think about pandemic, racism is a pandemic, right? So we have not left the pandemic behind. Um, so how do we support and continue to support those of us, those that we love, that we are connected to, while they are still going through this process of grief?
Active listening,
Mm.
holding
Talk more.
space, active listening.
Hmm.
Active listening is when you're listening, when you're fully present in a conversation. You're not listening to answer, you're not putting your judgment and your bias in it. I mean, we all have bias, but the point is, and please forgive my background, it's a party going on outside.
Oh, you can't hear it. Go ahead.
So when 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 someone calls you and talks to you about how they're feeling, that's their feeling. That is not for you to tell them that they don't feel that way. It is
Hmm.
not for you to tell them that my favorite guy won't put more on you than you can bear. We're not going to get into that conversation, but it is important to just hold space for people in their grief. Now, if you have a resource, if you know they're grieving the loss of their job and you know someone is hiring, by all means, send them the resources or send them the referrals. If you know, there were a lot of organizations giving free grief counseling groups.
Hmm.
Send them the information. Whether what they do with the information, that has nothing to do with you. But be able to give them a resource. If you can't give them a resource, give them you, all of you, in that moment.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when someone is grieving, they don't want to hear all of that. I have actually had this done for me, and I have done for others. Sometimes you just holding the phone. Nobody's saying anything. But to know that someone is there for you speaks without sound.
Yes. Yes.
And I think when you talk about how do we support our family and friends and things like that in those grieving moments or those raw moments, do it and do it genuinely
Hmm.
and let them have their moment to be vulnerable and transparent and as open with you as they are desiring to be in that moment. Because when you do anything else to someone who is in the middle of grieving or dealing with the emotions and stuff that they're feeling, they'll shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll shut down and they may not open up to someone else because the fact that they came to you says that they trusted you enough to be a safe space for them to say whatever they needed to say, whether you agree with it or not.
Right. Right. Right.
Now, let me add the dot, dot, dot. There's always that. Now,
Yeah.
if their
Yes. Go
issue
on.
is with you, then you got to process that a little bit differently. But if they're genuinely coming to you and saying, "I'm hurting,"
Hmm.
you know, I I I am feeling a way about my loss of resource, my loss of my relationship, the loss of my family member. Uh, Monet said it perfectly. The
Yes.
ministry of just being present. That
Yes.
that is one of the most loving things that you could give to someone. That's the best gift that you can give to someone when they are hurting,
Yes.
is the ministry of being present
Yes. Yes. Not listening to respond, or listening to do,
or listening to defend.
or listening to defend. Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That ministry of presence is so important, and it still yet is. I mean, it doesn't stop now that the world is opening up. People still need someone to talk to, right? People are still going to need, if they have found that safe space in you, people are still going to need space held for them. The other thing that came up for me while you were talking is that it's, know when to refer. They might know when, yeah, know when to refer. It may be something you are not equipped to deal with.
I will refer.
Come on, and you
I
the
will
expert.
refer. We're gonna leave that expert word floating out there. Derek Jackson messed that up for everybody. That expert word, but
Oh, geez.
we you have to know your limitations,
Yes.
and it's okay if you have them. It doesn't make you less equipped if you are not equipped to handle something someone gives you. You
Right.
may be equipped for the first half of the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but you do someone harm
Yes.
when you are when because you need to, it makes you feel important
Mm-hmm.
that they are even coming to you, that you won't release them to their greater good,
Wow.
because you have to be the person, that you have to be the savior for everyone.
Mm, mm, mm.
So, it's okay to say to someone, I hear you, I'm listening, I'm here, and anything that you else you want to share with me, I'm here. At the same time, I must be honest, I really think that you should talk to a therapist or a mental health specialist or someone to assist you with how you're feeling. It's
Right.
okay to say that. And if they say, I don't want to do that, I just want to talk to you, that's fine. Just be aware that the stuff that you are talking about, the things that you are going through, require something additional.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking to me for healing, you might not get healing with me. You'll get a listening ear, but you might not get healing with me, because what you require
Mm-hmm.
is beyond my grade.
Right. Right. And I think we have found, and so you and I have talked about stuff like this on Walking Heavy, right? That there are people, there are pastors, right, leaders of faith-based organizations that have, yes, there's a difference between pastoral counseling, right, and the science-based approach, right? Um, and so we have to be really careful, those of us who are a part of churches or other faith-based organizations, who people are coming to us for care, because we, as a I guess a spiritual leader, folk might come to you or I, right, for, because they want somebody that's specifically a spiritual leader to counsel them. And the problem arises when some of those spiritual leaders do not refer, right? They want to, you got to pray about it, and read the word, and do all these rituals, but they do not refer, which, like you said, causes harm. And one of the things that Bishop Fonda always talks about is called, do no harm, right? So us as spiritual leaders, and any if you're a leader in any part of the community, right? You don't have to be a faith-based person. Uh, Refer, know what discern, and know when it is your limit. Because as Renair said, if it goes beyond that, right, you can really do some harm to that individual who's coming to you seeking care.
Right. And things can be done in tandem.
Hmm.
When if I'm working with an individual, say I'm working with an individual around their faith trauma, the first thing I say to them, are you in therapy?
Mm,
If we've started and we've gone on a little bit of time and they tell me that they're in therapy, at some point I say, does your therapist know that you're working with me? Because there is spiritual care
yeah,
and there is mental care, psychological care.
psychological. Hmm.
And so they can work hand in hand. It's not to say that if you're a spiritual leader that you have to just release just have no. When I said release them to a greater good, I was talking about, someone who is not trained or skilled.
Hmm.
If you are doing pastoral counseling and you're taking care of their spiritual well-being, there still may be something required on a psychological, and especially if they are dealing with symptoms of depression,
Yeah,
if they're dealing with serious or a certain level of anxiety.
yeah.
I'm not saying take away the prayer and take away the reading of the word. And I know
Hmm.
you understand, but I'm making it clear
Right,
because people are
right.
watching. I'm not saying take away God. I'm not say whatever your faith journey is, I'm not saying take that away. I'm saying that you can add, you can do both, and it
Yes,
doesn't have to be either or.
yes. Both and I don't. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Renair. Hello, everyone. I see you still coming on. Thank you for joining us, Matthew. Renee, sis, how you doing? Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Those who are commenting and those who have not. We are so glad that you have joined us for our conversation today with Dr. Renair Amin. And again, we want to invite you to share this broadcast with your family, with your friends. If you haven't liked us on Facebook yet, we ask you to do that. If you're watching on YouTube, we ask that you also subscribe to our YouTube channels, not just our channels, but Dr. Renair's as well, those of you who are watching. And if you're watching on Cara, hey, y'all, thank you for joining us. Okay, well, we're coming down to the wire. We're coming down to the wire. So, how do we individually and yes, oh, thank you, Matthew. Yes, I'm so grateful that this, yeah, is this one of your folk, Renair, Matthew? Well, we are so glad that you're here, Matthew, and we're glad that this conversation is being had and you're able to listen. And so again, as I've been inviting you guys to do from the beginning, please, post your comments and post your questions, right? We do have time for some questions. So if you have questions for Renair, go ahead and post them and we will make sure, as time allows, that we answer them. How do we individually and collectively face or overcome ambiguity about the future, right? Looking ahead, looking towards the future, considering um, COVID is here. And, now that with this new variant and other variants, right? It's not going anywhere, right? We know that the new school year is coming up. Next month, children are going to start going back to school. If I'm not mistaken, I think is it mandatory in New York now that children are in classes yet?
I'm
But I know, yeah. So I know in other places it's going to be mandatory that children are back in the classroom, right? Um, and yet many, are still facing, you're talking about loss. Many are still dealing with unemployment, still dealing with still are being challenged, right? still seeking health care, still trying to make ends meet, right? How do you believe as individually and collectively as a community, right? How do we face this together? How do we move forward together?
So again, this is my personal belief, because it's not going to go away,
Hmm.
right? Because we're still dealing, again, like I jokingly said earlier, it's kind of like the cleanup. This is the cleanup. So there's a book called The Power of Now that
Hmm.
talks about living in the moment. Because a lot of the information that we receive comes from media, based on and which is difficult sometimes, based on the media platform, because the media platform is geared towards its constituency.
Hmm.
All you can really do is live in the present moment with the information that you are given in that time.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? If you try to project the future, we can't really project the future because we don't know how things are going. Every day I get up, because I don't really watch the news at night. I don't like taking things like that into my slumber. So when I
Hmm.
get up in the morning, I don't watch the news, but I get like a briefing, and I read the briefing about what's happening with the variant around the world, what's happening with this, what's happening with that, and then I allow that to fuel the decisions that I have to make,
Mm.
because this is so uncertain. The way
Yeah.
that it moves, the way that it shows up. Because think about it. Let's go back to when we were still trying to figure out what was happening in COVID-19.
Yeah.
That was part of the problem. We were trying to project where we were going and what was going to happen. That every day when something changed, everybody was like, well, what does that mean for this? And what does that mean for tomorrow?
Hmm.
Part of the way that I believe that the community begins to move forward, we're asking, what does that mean for today?
Mm.
How do we
I like
support
that.
where we are today? How
Yeah.
do we provide what people need today, instead of trying to figure out what people need tomorrow? Because even the scientists and the government can't figure out what people will need tomorrow.
Yes. Yes.
That's how we ended up short on resources in some places, because they assumed that this area was going to be the area that needed it, when it was this area was the area that needed it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I really believe that we are being pushed to look at the present and what is relevant in the today than
Yeah.
what is relevant 6 months from now. Now, there are people that are hired and skilled to watch the trends. There are analysts that are in place
Hmm.
to talk about, well, this is what it could be projected to be. Those numbers are good to have. But when you are talking about dealing, like, I just saw the comment. Monet said, my child has anxiety about going back.
Yeah.
She has to deal with her child in this moment. She can't be like, well, we'll see how you feel in September.
Right. Right. Right.
Because we could be dealing with something totally different in September. So
Hmm.
I really believe that it means, when we come to the table, we have to be talking about what is happening in the immediate short term need of that relationship, of that organization, of that job,
Hmm.
just the immediate. Because it's too, if we keep saying we'll wait until we see, we'll already be there when it happens,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
won't be able to have a proper action plan in place. When coaches and mental health professionals and all of that, when they create action plans, they're creating action plans for what is happening in the moment to help for tomorrow.
Oh, that's
They're
good.
not making the action plan for tomorrow.
Ah, that's good. Yes. Yes. Dr. Perry says, yes, absolutely, Dr. Perry. We are learning as it is happening to us. She said, good point. Look to the present. As a senior with vulnerabilities, I'm really wondering, how do I go through another stretch? These are real. Go ahead, Renee.
And that's the conversation the community should be having right now.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, and this happens in relationships too, we wait until the emergency to call the fire department when
That's
there are
it.
things that we could be doing in the now to 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 help. So the organizations and the people with the resources should be coming to the table going, okay, so we know that our elder population had the most difficulty, or a great difficulty. What can we be doing for them now?
Right. Right.
Don't wait till the variant or the delta done flew into it, done passed its way to your city to start having that conversation. What
Right.
can we put in place for our elders now? So thank you for that, Dr. Perry.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Perry. Ah, Renair, this has been such a enlightening and fulfilling conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on Flow Conversations this evening. Can you tell us a little bit? I know you talked about it earlier, but tell us about some things coming up for you, some things that you're doing right now, and looking ahead to the future, what's coming up for you.
So right now, I am in about this time tomorrow. I'll be on a stage answering Q&A questions for the Miss Exquisite Full Figured USA at Large division of the at large pageant. So I am competing for the crown this weekend. So that's on point. I am in the midst of working with some organizations to do some presentations around faith-based trauma and LGBTQ communities of color, which was something that really took off over this past year. I've had the privilege to work with the Department of Health, Administration for Children's Services, WEPA, and other organizations. And so I'm grateful for that. And if you're watching and this is a conversation around faith based trauma that you would like to have with your organization, let me know. And pretty much I'm gearing up for the fall, birthdays and other um, opportunities that I get to walk into a new podcast that I'm working on with a sister friend of mine. And so there are a number of things in the works,
Hmm.
but I tell people all the time, I'm always here. You can find me, Renair Amin, everywhere. You can absolutely find me. And I'm just so thank you to faith leaders of African descent for inviting me and allowing me to be a part of this conversation. I have a great love for faith leaders. I was on the board at some point and learned a lot So I am grateful to be able to sit here and have this conversation and look forward to being involved in some things in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being here with us, for saying yes, for engaging us in such a profound way. Those of you who are watching, thank you again for being here with us. Dr. Perry is clapping. Yes. Please continue to share it, even when we're off the air. It is a conversation that I believe that many people need to hear. So please continue to share it and watch the replay. Right. And continue to support FLoAD. Those of you who are on, listen, tell the people about LGBT faith leaders of African descent. We want to invite you to join us next month. Next month, on the third Thursday, we're going to be talking about the creativity that has been birthed since the shutdown, and we're going to talking to some really creative folk. And so we don't want you to miss it. As long as you have liked our page and subscribed to our YouTube channel, you will get the opportunity. You won't miss any of those things that we have coming up. Thank you again for joining us. Be safe. Have a great weekend. Dr. Renair, I love you. and I'm rooting for you for this weekend. Have a good night, everyone. Good night.